Hi folks, we're Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the globalist media machine, the lying machine, the propaganda machine, the narrative control machine that they've really had close to complete control over for decades now. I remember the days when the globalists weren't in control and weren't spinning an internationally coordinated, centrally scripted propaganda narrative. And I invite you to go and look at, say, a newspaper from 1970, for example, and then compare that to a newspaper today, or the media outlet today, or even newspapers sort of 30 years after 1970, and just have a look at how much propaganda was being inserted into the media, all of it pro-globalist, all of it to soften up the Western population for the globalist, the globalist ideology to be imposed on them without their consent. It was sort of a backdoor way of not so much gaining consent from the Western populations, but of reducing their capacity to fight back or to see that something was wrong, or they were losing their rights and having ideological government imposed on them without their consent. And if you can sort of condition people to think, there's nothing really wrong with it, hey, it's okay. And this happens in various ways. What, you got a problem with migration? Is that because you're a Nazi? Are you Hitler? Is that why you got? And putting also the shaming and blaming thing of, have you got a problem with black people being in charge? Are you a racist Nazi? Is that way? And so on and so forth. And the propaganda was designed to gin that up and juice it up so that opposition to the globalist ideological program would be minimised or reduced, or as they would think, hopefully eradicated altogether. Now, you'd think that things are sort of maybe changing a bit recently, but I logged on to probably one of the biggest news sites in the world, online news sites in the world, and it had on the first, before it starts to refresh going down the page, it had 30 stories on the page. Now, some of those are just nonsense stories, like I don't know what some singer or movie star said or supposed to have said. There's just nonsense sort of things. But 16 of the 30 stories were political stories, and this sort of irritated me here, and I'm sure many other people. Is two of the 16 stories, 16 out of 30 are political. Okay, two of the stories were really just mentioning some of the new Trump administration's policies, not going into any detail, just mentioning passing, but negative slants, but it wasn't hysterical or anything. It was pretty low key and almost a matter of fact type reporting, but again, displaying it in a negative way. But with the other 14 stories, we're talking rabidly anti-Trump. So in that feed of stories, political stories, in the world's biggest online news machine, not a single story was favourable or neutral about Trump. All of them were rabidly, and we're all using that assertion method. We all know that he is a Nazi, Hitler, fascist, misogynist. We all know that, and then go straight into and everyone is agreement about the fascist Nazi and hysterical reporting by obvious activists that have this breathless approach to reporting the latest wickedness and evil, and we're bringing it to you. We're the resistance, fighting back again, and so on. And it's pitched very much in that sort of mold. If they're going to quote anybody about Trump, they only go to people that will talk negatively. No one is no opinion is sourced where they may have a more balanced, measured, or even a positive opinion. So clearly it's propaganda, and it's stacked and loaded. Now, again, this is one of the biggest, not one of the biggest online news site in the world. why, and they've been part of this fact-checking machine, and they're very quick to take down videos of people that may criticize globalists and globalist policy, but they're equally keen to give complete free rein to anyone who hysterically denounces and accuses Trump of things, or people in his administration and so on. And it's always couched in the negative view. They're bad, evil people, and we're going to hold them to account. What? And, you know, if Biden and Trump do exactly the same thing, they'll still say, well, Biden did it, you know, he's a good guy, but Trump's the bad guy for exactly the same thing. So there's, again, no bad, it's pure propaganda. Let's call it what it is. You know, Trump opposes or is not on side with the globalist project, and therefore they must defame him and crush him. I mean, goodness me, they tried to put him in prison, even assassinate him, for goodness sake. So an interesting thing, I saw an interview with Steve Bannon. I think he's being interviewed by a British journalist, and I think it was Steve Edgington. I'm paraphrasing here, but Bannon said in words to the effect that the state of politics today is that the globalists will crush you, you know, bankrupt you, they will kill you in order to get their own way. And if you want to be a politician that's not owned and bought and paid for by the globalists, then you need to accept that that's how things are. And if you've got a problem with that, don't get into politics, because that's the game now. You know, they'll throw you in prison, they'll bankrupt you, they'll make up false charges against you. The entire legal system and policing system is activist and controlled by the globalists. The media is. They'll defame you. You know, you'll never work in this town again. And it's quite true what he says. You know, that is pretty much the state of things. If you're viewed as an influential threat, organizational threat to the globalist ideology they're trying to impose, they will come after you. You know, all the forces of the state, and they've infiltrated every Western and control every Western government now. In fact, the United States now is the only Western government they don't totally control. So that's a scary sort of thought, that we now live in an era where they'll kill you if you don't agree with, assuming you're influential. If you're irrelevant, then who cares? But even small channels, you know, online channels, my own, for example, you know, small online channels here, you come too close to the bone and upset the globalist machine, they'll take down the video and threaten you with loss of, you know, they'll get rid of you altogether off the platform. I mean, that's insane. That's how bad the censorship machine is. But I want to talk particularly now about the funding, the USaid, and there are numerous other NGOs in Britain and all across the Western world that are collecting money. They're getting government money. They're laundering money for, you know, George Soros or something, and they're channeling those funds into the media outlets and to you know, the propaganda machine generally. Now, I did years ago, I did back of the envelope sort of arithmetic on the CNNs and the MSNBCs and, you know, all the New York Times, you know, all the super pro globalist media outlets, BBC in Britain and the likes, and none of them would survive. None of them could commercially survive. Even the ones that claim to be commercial and so on, none of them could survive on viewership and readership and the advertising revenues that would come with that. None of them could. They all had to have very substantial government handouts. Now, if you look at, say, the Canadian government, they keep the pro-globalist propaganda media alive in Canada. Without government support, they just simply wouldn't exist. Now, they could exist if they changed their business model to get more readers, but they exist as a propaganda machine to implement the globalist project and to marginalize any who disagree with the globalist project. So they're always going to have a small readership and viewership. They will never have enough to be commercially successful, because their sole purpose is to deliver propaganda and is to denounce anyone against or ask questions about the globalist ideological project that's being imposed on Western citizens without their consent. So none of these could exist. So I did some, again, back of the envelope arithmetic on I remember doing it on CNN. This is years ago now, and this would have been 2017 maybe. And the sums I came up with were that they, well over half of their total budget is being subsidised from somewhere. Either they're getting, double tax write-off, special cozy tax write-off deals. They're being handed money by the government, or they've got other sources of income that they're managing to not declare. And whether that's USaid, funneling it through all different NGO networks, and making it, very, very difficult to trace and to follow the money. But they're being subsidised. They are being subsidised to tell lies and propaganda to the American or the Western public. And this is the same in every Western country. There's not a single outlet in Australia, for example, in the mainstream that speaks out against globalisation and the globalist project. Maybe some questions get asked, but even that's gentle. So there's nothing against it whatsoever. And the idea that democracy is being trampled upon and ignored and discarded and taken out back and shot us. I mean, who cares? Provided black lesbians are getting more rights, that sort of attitude pervades really the whole dialectic about what government is and societal structure should be and so on. But the none of these media outlets could have survived without illicit, under the table, backroom funding. None of them could have. So the whole media propaganda machine was kept alive. Not organically, or not because the public wanted to hear it or listen to it or anything like that, but because it was being funded through the back door. None of them could exist commercially. And this is the same with these media outlets, or in the case of this online media outlet thing today. None of these can survive without illicit funding. So whilst the funding on USaid has been cut off, the globalists will be busily demanding that all the other Western nations, Britain and Germany and France, all that sort of thing, that all those nations increase their illicit, scam, corrupt funding of media institutions to make up for what the US has taken away, and that's happening right now. So I would hope that the Trump administration uses US clout in the same way that the globalists use US clout to push and implement the globalist project, that the Trump team and the Trump administration uses the US clout to unwind the globalist machine. And I hope they do it quickly and effectively, because as I see it now on this online biggest online news outlet in the world, it's viciously and rabidly anti-Trump. Not because they hate or don't hate Trump, but because he's opposing the globalisation project, and they just can't tolerate that. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.